Welcome back, everyone. We are diving deep today into a case that's really shaken the University of Georgia community, the murder of Laken Riley.
Yeah, it's complex. And with the trial happening right now, we're getting a much better look at what happened that February morning.
Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit. Who was Laken Riley, and what do we know about her life before all this happened?
Well, she was a nursing student at UGA, 22 years old. She was known for, I mean, everyone says how dedicated she was to her studies, and she loved to run. Kind of a bright light by all accounts to her friends and family.
And it was during one of her morning runs that this happened, right? This crime.
Yeah. Sadly, February 22nd, Laken left her house. It was a little after 9 a.m. She went for her usual run. She had her noise-canceling AirPods in, and she was carrying her iPhone. It was a route she ran all the time, familiar. But yeah, things took a very bad turn that day.
So take us through, like, what happened next? When did things kind of go wrong?
Well, just 8 minutes after she left, her iPhone activated the emergency SOS, and that automatically dialed 911.
Oh, wow. That sends chills down my spine. Was she able to talk to anyone? To the operator?
No. The call got cut off from Laken's end, and then 911 tried to call her back, but no answer. So it's a really it's a haunting detail, really kind of shows how sudden and violent this was.
I can only imagine the fear in those last moments. So her roommates, at this point, they had no idea.
No, not at this point. They got worried when she didn't come home, when she usually did. So they used the Find My Friends app, and it led them to, like, a wooded trail near their house, and that's where they found one of her AirPods. And understandably, they panicked and called UGA police.
Oh, my gosh. That must have been terrifying for them. What did the police find when they got there?
So one of the officers, Sergeant Maxwell, he testified about the search. And they found her body off the trail, kind of hidden by some leaves. Clothing was messed up, and she had really bad head injuries. So right away this wasn't an accident.
It's heartbreaking. I bet the court heard some really tough testimony about those first moments at the crime scene.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Both the officer and a GBI agent, they described the scene, and it definitely pointed to a violent struggle. There was this one area about 64 feet from where they found Laken where there were a lot of disturbance, leaves everywhere, blood, rocks that had been moved. They think that's where it happened, where the attack happened.
So they had a crime scene, but did they have any leads on a suspect at that point?
Not really at first, but their investigation quickly led them to Jose Badia. He lived in an apartment complex pretty close to the crime scene.
Okay, so this is where the case kind of takes a turn. What was it that connected Jose Badia to this?
So this is a big one. Police searched the dumpster near Jose's building, and they found a blue jacket and gloves.
Okay, and those were connected to the crime house.
Well, there's security footage, and it showed a man throwing those things in the dumpster, and they think it was Jose. But what's really damning is they found a fingerprint in blood on Laken's phone.
Yeah.
And it matched Jose.
Wow, so that connects him directly to the victim's phone. Did forensics play a big part in this case?
Yeah, big time. They actually used 3 different types of DNA analysis: traditional, YSTR, and true allele. And they all added to the puzzle, so to speak. The results, they linked Jose to the crime scene itself and also to a white styrofoam cup that was found near the trail.
So we've got fingerprints, DNA, maybe even video footage. Sounds like the prosecution had a lot to work with. What was their main argument?
So they laid out this story, of a planned attack. They argued that everything Jose did leading up to that morning, it was all deliberate, and it all pointed to a motive.
Okay. Can you tell us more about what evidence they used to support that theory, that it was planned?
Yeah. So a key part of their argument is this really creepy incident. It happened just hours before Laken was murdered. A female student who lived in Building S on campus, she reported a man trying to open her apartment door and looking in her window.
That's so disturbing. Did she describe the man? Was there any link to Jose?
She couldn't identify him, but she did describe his clothes, a dark hat and jacket. And that matched what Jose was wearing in that security footage from earlier that morning. So the prosecution, they're saying this shows a pattern and maybe even establishes a motive.
So they're saying this was calculated, maybe even stalking. Leading up to the attack on Laken, what about the defense? What do they say?
Well, they're saying that, maybe the evidence puts Jose near the scene, but it's mostly circumstantial. Nobody actually saw the attack. And they're saying, well, maybe someone else was using Jose's phone. Maybe it was even planted there. Just because he was near the scene doesn't mean he's guilty. So So where do we go from here? Like, what else are we going to see in this trial?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? We've heard both sides, and it feels like there's still, stuff missing. What could really change things?
I think expert witnesses. That's going to be big now. You know, the DNA people, fingerprint people, maybe even digital forensics, they're going to give their take on all this evidence.
Yeah, that makes sense. If they're saying the forensics aren't reliable, then having these experts explain it all, that's got to be important for the jury.
Exactly. They got to make those connections, between Jose and the crime scene. And the experts can help with that, but then the defense, they'll have their own experts, right? They'll try to find holes and make it all seem less certain.
So it's like expert versus expert. And they're all trying to get the jury to understand the science their way. What about, regular witnesses? Are there any that you think could really matter?
Oh, the woman who reported the peeping Tom, her testimony, that could be huge. The jurors will be hanging on every word,
Yeah.
right? What happened, how she described the guy, anything that ties it to Jose. And maybe, to why he did this.
It's tricky, though. The defense keeps saying it's not connected. Just a coincidence. Do you think the jury will care about her story? Since she couldn't really ID him.
Tough to say. They'll have to decide if she's believable, if she remembers clearly. And if what she says matches up with other stuff about how Jose looked that morning, the prosecution will play up any similarities, and the defense will, jump on anything that doesn't match.
It's crazy how one person's story could change everything. Are there any other witnesses to watch out for?
Laken's roommates. They'll be important. What they say about her routine, her personality, the stuff leading up to her disappearance, that gives the jury context, right? Makes Laken real, reminds everyone this was a person, a life that was taken.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the legal stuff. This isn't just a puzzle, it's a story about this young woman and real people who are dealing with this horrible loss.
You're right. It's about getting justice for Laken, but you can't forget the impact this has had on the people who loved her.
It's got to be hard trying to find justice while also remembering how awful this is for everyone.
It is. And that's something a jury has to deal with too, right, as they decide what happens to Jose.
So besides the witnesses, is there anything else, any evidence or strategies that could change things?
One thing that's interesting to me is whether the defense tries to say it was someone else. So far, they've been poking holes in the prosecution's case, but maybe they'll come up with their own story. Point the finger at someone else. Maybe a whole different scenario.
That would definitely be a twist. Do you think they've got anything to work with, or is that just us guessing?
Hard to know. They've been pretty quiet about what they're going to do. But if they can make the jury doubt it was Jose by giving them another explanation that makes sense, well, that could work.
So we'll see if they play that card. What about the prosecution? Any surprises from them? Or will they stick with the story they've been telling?
I think they'll keep building on that same story, show more evidence that backs up their timeline, more connections between Jose and the crime scene. Maybe new witnesses who saw Jose near the trail that morning, or more digital stuff from his phone or something.
It's interesting, all the technology in this case. We talked about the digital breadcrumbs, but could there be even more stuff they find?
Oh yeah, digital forensics is a big deal now. Maybe they'll find something in Jose's phone records, his social media, even location data from apps. Who knows?
It really makes you think. We leave these digital trails wherever we go, and they can tell a whole story. Sometimes even more than real physical evidence.
Absolutely. And we're going to keep seeing that in cases. It's a whole world of information out there, and they're getting better at using it.
So, thinking about closing arguments, how do you feel about the prosecution's case overall? Have they done enough to get a conviction?
I think they've made a good case. They've shown Jose was at the scene using the fingerprint, the DNA, the video. It all points to him. But it really depends on whether the jury believes all that, or if the defense has made them doubt it enough.
Yeah, it seems like their strongest point is just how much evidence puts Jose there. But the defense says just being there doesn't make him guilty. What's their best argument?
Their best argument is that nothing actually shows Jose hurting Laken. No one saw it. There's no weapon that for sure belongs to him. And even though there are signs of a fight, there's no DNA, like under her nails or anything, that proves he's the one who hurt her.
So it's like they have a bunch of clues, but no direct proof.
Yeah.
What else do you think the jury will be thinking about?
They'll be looking at, how believable the witnesses are, how good the lawyers are, and the story each side is telling. It's not just about the individual pieces, it's how it all fits together.
Like a big puzzle. And they have to figure out which pieces go where and which ones don't belong at all.
Exactly. They have to decide if the prosecution has given them the whole picture or if there are holes in it that make you doubt their story.
So as we wrap up this part, what's the most important question the jury has to answer?
The big one is, do they believe, without a doubt, that Jose Abadia is the one who killed Laken Riley? Everything else, all the arguments, all the evidence, it all comes down to that.
It's a big decision, and I think everyone is waiting to hear what they say.
This case has gotten everyone's attention, and the verdict is going to affect everyone involved.
What do you think will happen? Do you think they'll find him guilty?
It's tough to say. The prosecution has done well. They've told a good story, shown the evidence, but the defense has been smart. They've made some of that evidence seem less certain, and they've suggested other possibilities.
So the jury's really struggling with this, huh?
I think so. It's not easy. There's no obvious answer. They have to look at all these clues, decide who to believe, and figure out if the prosecution has proved its case.
Yeah, it's like it's going to be close. No matter what happens, this case is going to stay with us.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's shown problems with campus safety, how important technology is in investigations, and how hard it can be to get justice when the truth is hard to find.
We've all learned a lot from this.
We have. And while we wait for the verdict, I hope people keep thinking about what this case means, about keeping campuses safe, about our privacy online, about how we make sure justice is done.
It's been a long road, and it's been emotional.
It has. But we're not done yet. We'll be back with the last part of our deep dive into the Laken Riley case. We'll talk about the possible verdicts, what we think will happen, and how this case will change things in Athens and beyond.
You know, we've talked a lot about the evidence and the legal arguments, but I want to kind of circle back to Laken. You know, she was a young woman, had her whole life ahead of her. And now, I mean, her family and friends, it's got to be so hard for them.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in all the legal stuff, but this isn't just a case, right? It's about a real person. And the people who loved her are dealing with this horrible loss.
I can't even imagine sitting in that courtroom day after day, hearing all of this, seeing the person who might be responsible.
It's got to be so hard to face something like that, you know? It takes so much strength, but they're there. And that shows how much Laken meant to them and how much they want justice for her.
Yeah. I hope they know that they're honoring her memory by being there, and that people are listening to them.
I think they do. And whatever the verdict is, it's going to take a long time to heal. I hope they find peace and support.
This case has really made people think about campus safety. You know, it's like even in places where you think you're safe, like a college campus, bad things can still happen.
Absolutely. It's a wake-up call. We can't just assume we're safe anywhere.
Yeah. There are a lot of questions now about security, about being aware of your surroundings, about what the police can do to prevent this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and how they respond when it does happen.
It's a conversation we need to have. Campuses need to be safe for students, for faculty, for everyone. And it's up to the universities to do something about it.
So what can they do to make things safer?
Well, it's not just one thing. It's about security, sure, but it's also about like changing the way people think, you know? Teaching people how to stay safe, being aware of each other, making sure people feel like they can report anything suspicious.
So it's about everyone looking out for each other.
Exactly. We all have a part to play. In this case, it shows us that we can't just ignore it. Safety matters everywhere.
So we're getting close to the end of the trial. Any final thoughts? What will the jury be thinking about when they make their decision?
Well, it's a big decision. They've heard all the evidence, seen the witnesses, heard both sides of the story. Now they have to figure out what really happened and what the right outcome is.
That's a lot of pressure. I think everyone's waiting to hear what they say.
This case has touched a lot of people, and the verdict, it's going to affect everyone involved.
What do you think will happen? Will they find him guilty?
It's really hard to say. The prosecution, they've built a good case. They've shown Jose was there. They've got the evidence. But the defense, they've done a good job, too. They've made people question some of that evidence, and they've given other explanations.
So it sounds like the jury has a tough choice to make.
They do. It's not an easy case. There's no clear answer. They have to look at all the clues, decide who they believe, and then decide if the prosecution has proved their case.
It's going to be close. No matter what happens, this case is going to have a lasting impact.
Oh, absolutely. It's shown us that campus safety isn't perfect. It's shown how important technology is in these investigations. And it's shown how hard it can be to find justice when the truth is hard to find.
We've all learned a lot from this case.
Yeah, we have. And as we wait for the verdict, I think it's important to keep thinking about what we've learned. about keeping campuses safe, about protecting our privacy online, and about making sure justice is done.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Laken Riley case. We'll be back with more updates as they happen, but for now, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay safe.